Support for I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes from MX Publishing, with the largest catalog of new Sherlock Holmes books in the world. New novels, biographies, graphic novels, and short story collections about Sherlock Holmes. Find them at mxpublishing.com.
And listeners like you who support us on Patreon or Substack, sign up for exclusive benefits at patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock or IHearOfSherlock.substack.com.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 318, Sherlock Holmes 5-Minute Mysteries.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became astronomer.
In a world where it's always 1895, it's I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first unofficial consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we interview authors, editors, creators, and other prominent Sherlockians on various aspects of the great detective in popular culture.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Burt Wolder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
I'm Bill Curtis. This is I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere. Now, here are your hosts, Scott Monty and Burt Wolder.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Bill Curtis. It's an honor to be here. Welcome, everyone, to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Burt Wolder.
But the mystery is, Burt, who will you be in 5 minutes?
Nobody ever heard of me. I go to the check-in desk. I say, I'm here. I'm checking in. They say, who? What?
Who? What? Huh?
Nah.
Burt, who?
It's a mystery.
I-Ho's what?
That's right. Sherlock. When? What?
Yes. It's like, you probably remember the Mel Brooks remake of the Jack Benny film, To Be or Not to Be?
Or Not to Be, right.
Yeah, and it was Arthur Bronsky? Frederick Bronsky. Yeah, world famous in Poland. So there you go. We are I-Ho's. We're world famous on the internet.
On the internet.
I don't know what that gets us. Well, anyway, got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to be talking to longtime listener and somebody we've been a fan of for a while, Ray Riethmeier, fantastic editor and author in his own right. We'll be talking about a fascinating book that basically Ray rescued from the dustbin of history. How he got there and how he managed to discover it and resurrect it, well, that is the story that he's going to tell us today. We also, of course, have events that you should know of in the learned societies. That'll be coming up shortly. After the interview, you'll want to stick around because Madeline Quinones is back for one of her chance of listening reviews, where she looks at a certain Sherlockian podcast in each episode here and gives us a down low on exactly what it's all about. And after that is the canonical couplet quiz, where if you are lucky enough to guess the answer to this episode's couplet, we're going to send you a free copy of Ray Riethmeier's book. Of course, we have to pick your name at random from all the people that guess correctly, but that's the idea. And of course, we'll be announcing the winner of Sherlock Holmes and the Real Thing. That's the prize from the last episode, Nicholas Meyer's latest book. So if you folks, if anyone is interested in listening to our show without pre-roll advertisements or post-roll advertisements or mid-roll advertisements, we put them everywhere we can. You can listen to the show ad-free by going to Patreon or Substack. Both of those platforms have membership-driven versions of our show where you not only get the shows ad-free, but you also get bonus content that isn't available to our general listening audience. And the good news is, if you do subscribe to us there or support us there, you can take the feed from those and plug them into your traditional podcast listening apps. So if you happen to listen to us, say, on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, you can take your Patreon or your Substack link and plug it into either one of those and any of the other ones as well, and listen to us there for free. Well, ad-free, I should say. It does cost something to listen to us ad-free. Either way, folks, we're going to extract something from you for listening to us. That's the price you pay for a quality podcast like we have here. And you can do that by going to patreon.com/IHearOfSherlock or ihearofsherlock.substack.com. We've got links in the show notes. Would love to hear your feedback and would absolutely love to welcome you as a member of our supporters. So check it out, and thank you. Well, let's march into these fine learned societies as we promised you. Before we get to our review of a couple of weeks of the Sherlockian calendar here, Bert, we had an interesting item drop into our inbox today. How timely. And do you remember what that is by any chance?
Yeah, of course I do. The inbox is one of the things that's in email. You know, if you go in wait a minute. That's not your question. Yes, I do remember. It was a note from our pal Ed Pettit at the Rosenbach in Philadelphia to tell us that the terrific series that he runs, Sherlock Monthly, is back. And if you're listening to this on the same day that this show goes live, you've only missed the first the first appearance of it, because that happened on the 27th of September.
No. You're getting your dates mixed up, Bert. We're recording on the day we're releasing the show. This is the 15th.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
This is September 15th.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me look around.
I know.
Wait. Just hold on. You're right. This is the 15th.
Oh, your calendar didn't follow you on the road today.
Wait a minute. How come I wasn't told?
Oh, I don't know. It's because your calendar is silent, you see.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I never should have told Siri to shut up. They don't. These systems don't like that. Yes, of course, you're absolutely right. Once again, I'm wrong, but on the 27th. So, friends, it's just 12 days away for the restart of Sherlock Mondays.
Oh, we're looking forward to that. We'll have a link to Sherlock Mondays in the show notes, as well as a link to the Sherlockian calendar, where we are going to delve in now. On November 1st, if you happen to be 5 miles from anywhere, and I think that would include everyone listening, Derek Belanger is running a virtual meeting of the 5 Miles from Anywhere group. You can find them on Facebook. That's on November 1st.
And on November 2nd, the crew of the Bark Lone Star is having another one of their regular virtual meetings. Steve Mason is the contact for that.
Fantastic. And my original scion, the Men on the Tour from Connecticut, is having a dinner meeting on November 2nd in Derby, Connecticut. Or I suppose if you're from England, Derby, Connecticut. And you can contact Greg Derrick.
Yes, and the 5th of November, that is, of course, Guy Fawkes Day. Remember the 5th of November. You can remember that on Ash Wednesday in New York City, and your contact is Shanna Carter.
If you would like to participate in a virtual meeting of the Transfixed Correspondence of Phoenix, you can also do that on November 5th. Lauren Cercone. Am I saying that correctly? Lauren Cercone? Cercone?
I think it's Leiron, isn't it? Oh, you mean the last name. Yeah.
Lauren Cercone.
I think so. I hope so.
Well, Lauren, correct us if we're wrong. But either way, folks can show up and learn for themselves on November 5th.
Yes, and I'd love to show up. Well, I can actually at the virtual meeting of the Shaka Sherlockians of Hawaii. And Dr. Joe Page is your contact there, or their website is shakasherlockian.com, Shaka Sherlockian.com.
Shaka Sherlockian. I love that. If you happen to be in St. Louis, Missouri on November 8th, again, that's a Saturday, the Parallel Case of St. Louis is having a meeting. You can find out more about that from Rob Nunn and on the Parallel Cases website.
And on the 8th of November as well, the Cespudlians of London, Ontario are having their virtual meeting. And you can, you can find out the contact at cespudlians.weebly.com.
And if you are in New York and you didn't get your fill of ash on the 5th of November, you can follow up with even more ash on November 8th. The Adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes hosting their fall luncheon. Evie Herzog is the contact. You can find out more about the Adventuresses at ash-nyc.com.
And still on November 8th, Northfield, Illinois, the Scotland Yarders are having their holiday luncheon. Janice Weiner is the contact for that.
I think is that Janice Weiner or Weiner? I'm pretty sure it's Weiner.
Weiner.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to get in trouble.
You sure it's
Weiner.
Janice, not Janice?
Janice? Janice, no, stop it. It's Janice Weiner, please.
I'm just trying to be thorough.
I want to be kind to the people in Chicago. There are so many great Sherlockians there. I am actually on my way to the Chicagoland area on September 27th myself. So,
good for you.
Yeah, the Tourists International.
Right, you're a speaker there.
Yes, and I still have to figure out what I'm talking about. Which I have to do that now for this episode. November 9th, Keene, New Hampshire. The Monadnock Sherlockians are meeting. Our friend Anna Behrens is running that one.
And on the 9th of November, the Tea Brokers of Mincing Lane are having one of their virtual meetings. Karen Ellery is the person who knows all about that.
Yeah, they don't mince words either.
No.
Locally here in Michigan, in Royal Oak, the Ribston Pippins are holding their 37th anniversary dinner. Regina Stinson is the contact there. You can find out more at ribston-pippins.com.
And that lists as a Silver Blaze and 37th anniversary dinner. How about that?
Well, it's not a Silver Blaze. I think we're just celebrating Silver Blaze.
I've got it. And a lot more going on the 15th. The Norwegian explorers have their virtual study group meeting. Tom Gottwald can tell you more.
And the Nashville Scholars of the Three-Pipe Problem having a lunch meeting in Nashville. Jeff Stewart there at NashvilleScholars.com.
And then finally on the 15th, a really magnificent event, the 75th anniversary of the Red Circle in Bethesda, Maryland is having their 75th anniversary special event, and it is indeed a special event because they will be screening 3 of the restored Stoll films featuring
Isla Norwood.
Isla Norwood.
Who stole them, though? That's the question.
That have not been seen in the United States for many, many decades. And Peter Blau can tell you more. And you can also look at their website, redcircledc.org.
Boy, I hope they've been able to add voices to that version of Sherlock Holmes at this point. No, it actually recalls the time we were in Chautauqua when we saw a few Isla Norwood films screened there. Our late, great friend Russell Merritt was there to introduce them. He was a silent film expert. And we had live piano accompaniment to act as an underscore for the films. It was really something fantastic. And I think if you go to our show notes, if you go to the archives, you can find episode 104, Sherlockians at Chautauqua. We'll have a link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, and I think that they're also going to have live music for that as well.
Yes.
In
I don't know if
in
it's the
Bethesda.
same accompanist or not.
Oh. Oh, it's live musical accompaniment by Ben Modell.
Not the same guy. Yeah. Folks, if you have an event that you would like to see added to the Sherlockian calendar, simply get in touch with Ron Fish. His contact information is there at SherlockianCalendar.com. Ray Riethmeier is a nitpicker for fun and profit. He's worked for the last 30 years as an attorney editor for Thomson Reuters, but he also edits new and classic pulp fiction for a variety of publishers. Ray has contributed to several Sherlock Holmes titles for the BSI Press, and he serves as co-editor of the Christmas Annual and newsletter for the Norwegian Explorers of Minnesota, his local science society. Ray's most recent project for Belanger Books was the Consultations of Sherlock Holmes, in which the mysteries emphasize the great detective's role as a consultant rather than being a primary investigator. And his newest book is Sherlock Holmes 5-Minute Mysteries, written by Kel Richards and edited by Ray Riethmeier. Ray received his investiture, Morrison, and Dodd in the Baker Street Irregulars in 2021. Ray Riethmeier, welcome to I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the program.
It is so nice to be with you here. I know we've seen you around the Sherlockian parts for quite a while, so it's going to be fun to have this conversation. Before we jump into the topic at hand, why don't we get down to the basics with you? How did you first come across Sherlock Holmes?
Well, to be honest, I think most of us would say, I don't really know. I think he's just always been there. But beyond the ubiquitous presence of Sherlock Holmes in our culture, I think the first time I really stood up and took notice of the canonical Sherlock Holmes as written by Conan Doyle was with the publication of the Cases of Sherlock Holmes comic book series by Renegade Press back in the mid-'80s. And that was a great publication because it was the actual stories written by Conan Doyle and copiously illustrated by artist Dan Day. So it would have the text on the page and he would lay it out in interesting ways with parts of the text over in one section and parts of the text over in another section. And he'd fill the page with his great black and white illustrations. And as a comic book reader, the first issue jumped out at me because it had a lovely painted cover by Dan Day and his brother David Day. And I picked that up and thought, well, I like Sherlock Holmes. Everyone likes Sherlock Holmes. I'm going to give this a try. And when I took it home and read it, there was just no going back. It's like, this is great. Where has this been all my life? And that was where it started.
That's fantastic. I remember those comic books, and the covers were just so well done. You know, those full color illustrations. Obviously, they were influenced heavily by Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. But the beauty there was you were actually getting the full canonical treatment. Like you say, you're reading the whole story. It's not abridged like some comic books are. You're actually immersed in the whole canon. Well, in the number of stories that they did for the canon. So
yeah, I think did about a third of the stories.
Yeah. Just by coincidence, have you had a chance to speak with Joanna Draper Carlson by any chance?
I have, and I know her interest in the comic book world of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
but no, we haven't had a lot of in-depth discussion.
Yeah, well, I mentioned that because we had her on the show on episode 239. And there's so much in terms of Sherlock Holmes in comic books and strips and whatnot that It's a topic that we could go on for a long time on, but that's not why we're here. So talk to us about how you first discovered this side association, this branch of people we know as Sherlockians that get together on a regular basis. How did you move from the Renegade comics to the canon to Sherlockians?
Well, the comics made me a fan, and I started reading. I decided I had to read ahead. I couldn't wait for the next issue to come, so I was able to find a copy of the 2-volume Doubleday set on my parents' bookshelf. So I dove into that. But the question was how I got into the community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought I was just pretty much alone. I didn't realize there was a larger Sherlockian community, except for the reference to that near mythological group, the Baker Street Irregulars, and well, that's just unattainable to a teenager. Maybe not, but that's how it felt at the time. And but in my part of the world, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and we did not have an active Sherlockian group there at the time. I understand there is one there now. I think it's called Rochester Row. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s and working for my current employer, and they decided that they wanted to change how their operations were being done, and they shifted my function to an office in Minnesota. So I had the offer to move to Minnesota. I investigated and thought, yeah, I will do that. So I made the move, and one of the first people I encountered out there was John Berquist, who worked for my employer in Minnesota. And he, somewhere along the line, we, in our conversations, came up that we shared the interest in Sherlock Holmes, and he said I should really go to the Norwegian Explorers meeting, and so I did. Although now that I'm saying this, I think I may have it backwards. I think it may well be that I went to a meeting first and met John there, and then we discovered that we both worked for the same company.
And then he invited you to a company event.
And then he invited, yeah. So it may have gone the other way. I'm not at this point. It's hard to say with certainty where I met John, whether it was at Thomson Reuters, and then we found out that we shared our Sherlock Holmes interest, or if it was at the Norwegian Explorers, where we found out, hey, our paychecks are cut by the same people.
So what was the point where you finally, how did you get enough head of steam around your interest in Sherlock Holmes to begin, thinking about him as a character?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Bert.
Well,
so, that's okay. Bert doesn't understand it either. So,
yeah, I mean, well, you've been in collaboration with other writers, and actually doing things with pastiches and collections and things like that, anthologies of stories.
Okay, all right, I got the gist of that now. Thank you. It took me a while before I realized that I wanted to contribute to the Sherlockian world, as opposed to just enjoying it. To actually contribute something new didn't come to mind for quite a while. And in fact, I mentioned my employer. I work as an attorney editor for Thomson Reuters, which is a very dull sort of thing to describe. I edit law books for a living, but I find it fascinating. It's exactly the kind of work I want to be doing, but I enjoy editing, and it strikes me as kind of befuddling that it never crossed my mind that I could apply my editing skills into something more interesting like Sherlock Holmes. And it really wasn't until I started becoming more active in the Norwegian Explorers that my vocation and avocation intersected, because I started contributing articles to both the Explorations newsletter and to the Christmas Annual. And it didn't take long before the people who were working on those, anytime there's somebody who's expressing an interest, people want to tap into that. And so I was asked to come on board and help edit both of those products. And I've been doing that for, 12, 13 years now. And that was a great way to start, recognizing that I can be an editor in the Sherlockian world. And really the first time I did something substantial with that was for one of the triennial conferences, when we did the theme of the misadventures of Sherlock Holmes. And we had a conference meeting for that, like 2 months before the conference was going to happen. And we'd had I think it was Julie McCurris suggested, wouldn't it have been a neat idea if we could have put together a book of all the stories that Ellery Queen mentioned in his original misadventures but didn't include in the book? Too bad we didn't do that. And at that point, Phil Burgum on the conference committee with me, he and I both leapt forward and said, we can do that. And everyone else on the committee said, that's impossible. You can't make that happen in the 6 to 8 weeks we have left before the conference actually happens. But Phil and I dug in and made that happen. That was the first time I ever got my name on the cover of a Sherlock Holmes book. And it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me to actually see, look what I can do with the talents that I have at my command. And after that, it was just a matter of time before I had the opportunity to work with the folks at Belanger Books. They actually reached out to me at one point and said, we have some projects that we want to publish. They're in need of an editor. And so we talked about what projects they had in line, and I started working with them. And so it's been a delight for me to be able to contribute to Sherlockiana in this way.
Oh, that's marvelous. I love it when a good story like that comes together. So I recall from my childhood one particular book, but it was part of a series of books by Donald J. Sobel called 2-Minute Mysteries. And as I look back on archive.org, and I'll have a link to this in the show notes, I found the original 1967 2-Minute Mysteries shows the top half of a stopwatch and the 2 minutes between 12 and 2 minutes past 12. And there's a Snidely Whiplash character kind of peeking out from one side of the bezel. And then crawling up the other side of the clock on his hands and knees is Sherlock Holmes. I don't think any of these stories involved Sherlock Holmes, but I do remember reading them probably in the 4th or 5th grade or so, and just being fascinated by knowing that there were all of the facts I needed to solve the case in those couple of pages, and I could set myself to it just like the inspector in the stories. I was fascinated. This is in my pre-Sherlock Holmes time. Well, now we have Sherlock Holmes 5-minute mysteries, and I'm interested in hearing your journey that connects your Sherlockian interests with what you managed to discover and document over the course of the years, because there's a there's a third party involved here under the name of Kel Richards. So tell us how this all fits together, Ray.
All right, I will do that. The book, Sherlock Holmes 5-Minute Mysteries, was written by Kel Richards. I had the great pleasure of being able to serve as the editor of this book, largely because this book could not have existed but for my intervention. And the way it all started was back in the 1990s. I was trying to fill up my Sherlockian library with all sorts of fun books. And I do have a particular interest in pastiches, and I enjoy what I think are good ones. But everyone has their own particular taste when it comes to Sherlockian pastiches. And what I think is great, other people probably think is garbage, and vice versa. But there was a short series of books that were published in the mid-90s, written by Kel Richards, that was called the Sherlock Holmes's Tales of Terror. And they were written for the younger market. They were clearly designed to appeal to the folks who enjoyed the R.L. Stine Goosebumps books. So the notion was that here's some books that might be a little more palatable for parents to have their kids reading if they're uncertain about what the contents of these scary Goosebumps books might be. I'm not sure there was any real problem with the Goosebumps books, but Kel Richards wrote these three books, Sherlock Holmes's Tales of Terror, and they were designed to appeal to the same audience. So it was things like The Headless Monk, The Vampire Serpent, and they were brisk reads, not very long. But what I found fascinating about them is that in the stories, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson expressed their Christian faith, which is not something that we're accustomed to seeing in the canon. But it didn't really take me out of the story. It felt rather natural to me to recognize that these were Victorian gentlemen of the time. In all likelihood, they were church-going gentlemen who had a faith that they kept close to the vest. It was not something they needed to share widely in every circumstance, but it was there. And so when I read these stories that Kel Richards wrote, it felt okay to me. I know that may be off-putting to some Sherlockian readers. They go, "What? Sherlock Holmes, a Christian?" Take it or leave it. But I liked it. And at some point, I started doing some internet searches. I mean, it was still the mid-90s, and I remember enjoying using the computer lab on my college campus. I graduated law school in 96, which was about the time these books were being published. And I don't know when I did my first web search for Kel Richards, but I was just looking to see if there was anything more by or about him that I could find. And somewhere along the line, over the years, I would keep looking, and the history here suggests to me that it was probably around 2002 that I stumbled across a webpage in Australia for a radio station in Australia that was keeping transcripts of their programming. Nothing done with technology, but clearly done by somebody writing really fast, keying on a computer. While the radio broadcasts were being aired, somebody was transcribing everything that was being said. And so they had records of their programming. And Kel Richards was one of their presenters. And he had a regular program, and once a week on his program, he would do a Friday 5-minute mystery. And some of them, not all of them, but some of these 5-minute mysteries starred Sherlock Holmes. And I thought, this is great. I finally found some more Sherlock Holmes stories written by Kel Richards. And I used my rudimentary computer skills at the time and grabbed copies of these transcripts and started creating a Word document. I would just keep pasting them in every time I would go back to that radio station's transcriptions page. I'd check each Friday to see, was there a Sherlock Holmes story this week? And if there was, I would copy it and add it to my Word document, which I thought was great. I was building a nice little document of these stories that otherwise I wouldn't be able to read. And that went on for probably a year or more. And I found myself ultimately with a collection of 50 5-minute mysteries that starred Sherlock Holmes, written by Kel Richards. And ultimately, the radio station's website stopped updating, and so I don't know if he kept writing them or if they just stopped updating. But I got 50 stories out of it, and ultimately the radio station's website disappeared altogether. And so then all I had left to prove that these stories existed was this Word document that I had printed out and had in a little plastic sleeve for my safekeeping. And I would occasionally go back to them and reread them and enjoy them. And at some point, my son became old enough that I realized I could share these with him because he was the right age for reading bedtime stories. And these 5-minute mysteries all had good moral lessons in the end. That was part of the appeal of these stories to me, was that they tell of a crime. Holmes is called in to investigate. You get to that point where Holmes says the inspector, arrest this man, and the question is, how does Holmes know? You've seen all the clues, turn the page and find what the answer is. And as you said, Scott, that whole notion of trying to figure it out for yourself, acting as the inspector yourself, it's quite fun. And but the twist on these is that more than just the recognition that Holmes and Watson may have been Christian, which Kel Richards had supplied in his Tales of Terror, in these 5-minute mysteries, the solutions allow Watson to elaborate on a moral lesson that can be derived from this crime and the solution that Holmes was able to provide. And so I thought that was a great thing that I could do with my son when he was like 8 or 9. We would read through the stories together. We'd see if he could come up with the answer. And then when it was done, it turned into an opportunity for a little kind of Christian devotional. And I thought that was a wonderful way to spend an evening with my son. And that, to me, I thought that's all it's going to be. But probably about 6 or 7 years ago, after I had been working with a variety of different publishers with Sherlock Holmes books and also doing some work for some pulp fiction publishers, I just kind of had the idea, well, it's a shame that I only have this document as a printout of what I've created in a Word document. It would be nice if I could just maybe turn it into a book that I would just get specially printed for myself. So I actually took some time and started formatting it with the idea that it's nothing that's going to be offered for sale, but I would just like to have a copy for myself. I didn't get very far with it because other parts of life interfered, but it kind of planted the seed that I would like to see this book exist. And what was it? 2 or 3 years ago, the Belanger people, Belanger Books, Derek and Brian, reached out to me to say they'd like me to contribute to one of their nonfiction books. It was called Reading Holmes, and they wanted me to write something about Holmes pastiches and what draws me to reading Holmes pastiches. And so I wrote an article, and I happened to mention the Tales of Terror stories that Kel Richards had written. And in passing, I said he'd also written these 50 other 5-minute mysteries that have never been collected. And I just kind of hoped that maybe the Belangers would see that and think, well, what could we do about that? And last year we got to talking at the BSI weekend in New York, and they asked me about that, and I said, I've got the stories. We just need to find the author. I mean, we certainly can't publish these things without the author on board. And so then I had to find him, and that was a challenge in itself. Again, it was like 2 decades after I did my last batch of internet searches for Kel Richards. It's like I'm doing it again, and this time I found him and was able to reach out to him. And at this point, I guess I feel I've babbled quite a bit. Is there anything in particular you want me to elaborate on?
Well, I'm
clarify?
curious. I'm curious. You've got these 50 5-minute mysteries, and you've clearly spent a lot of time with them, thought about them, found the transcriptions, used them with your son. What's your favorite? Or favorites? And would you pick one and just explain to our listeners, as an example, sort of how it works and what's going on?
All right. I'm not sure if I have a favorite, but what I really liked about these stories is that Kel Richards clearly knows the canon, and many of the stories are his attempt to tell the untold stories that Watson mentioned in passing. And so one of the fun ones in here is to realize that maybe some of those stories that we didn't know about until now is because they really weren't full short stories like the ones that Watson was publishing in the Strand. It may well be that they were a different kind of story, a shorter story, a quick 5-minute mystery perhaps, and he just didn't have the market for them at the time. And so when he mentioned the disappearance of James Phillimore, maybe he didn't write a full story for the Strand because it wasn't substantial enough for that. But it was perfect for a 5-minute mystery, and that is one of the stories in here. We get to find out, what happened when he stepped into his home for his umbrella and was never seen again. The clues are all there as Kel Richards plants them. Holmes is able to figure it out, and then we get the resolution and a nice moral about it. So I like that kind of thing. There's an awful lot of
well, staying with that one. What were some of the clues, and what's the moral?
Boy, let me think. Okay, well, I've got the book in front of me. So
Page 49.
Thank you. Page 49. Okay. Well, I don't want to give it away, but the story is laid out with the same kind of notion that we know, that this man stepped back into his home because it looks like it's going to be raining. And he steps back into his home, is never seen again. I believe it was the butler reports that, well, no, he's not here. And so nobody has any clue what happened. It's just that we know he came out of his home, decided to go back in, and I believe it was Holmes's rival Barker that was originally on the trail of this man, and so that's another bit of Sherlockian trivia, but the way that Holmes investigated to say, well, how can it be that this man steps into this home? He investigates, sees there's no possibility of hidden rooms, hidden passages, other escape routes. And all he has to go on is the testimony of the butler. And, well, that turned out to be the key. Something about the butler proved to be the solution. And this story actually has the moral of the mystery. It's an old maxim of mine that when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And Kel Richards plays on that idea that, well, there's it's impossible for him to have gone out a different door. It's impossible for him to have hidden in a hidden passage. So it might be improbable, but this is the only thing left. He's eliminated all the other things, and that's what we come to. And so that's the story in a nutshell without giving it away, I hope.
Well, I don't know if it was in this story, but in any story, any detective story, when you show up and find a butler whose last name is Did It, everyone knows the butler did it. No, sorry, Ray. When you think to the original Sherlock Holmes stories, because a lot of these, as you mentioned, are ripped from the headlines. These are the unscripted, the unwritten cases that Watson has mentioned or has put in his tin dispatch box. But when you think about the ones that were actually published, what moral lessons did Conan Doyle leave us with that kind of provided a trail for where Kel went?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think perhaps the first answer that comes to mind for me is the dichotomy that Doyle painted in the character of Sherlock Holmes with between law and justice. And for Sherlock Holmes, there was a higher justice than a strict adherence to the law, which is why we saw so often that he would perhaps let somebody escape punishment because they've had enough already, or he would compound a felony in certain cases because he thought there was a higher justice at play. And I think that may well be the idea that may have percolated in Kel Richards' mind, that there is a higher justice. And I think that the connection there to the Christian faith, I think, is not that far of a leap. If there's human law that isn't quite, it doesn't feel just to us, what higher court is there to which we can appeal? And I think for those of us who share the Christian faith, it's a great comfort to know that there is the highest court of appeal really belongs to God. And I think that's probably the sort of thing that Kel Richards wanted to impute into the character of Holmes, is that seeing that he doesn't necessarily hold fast to human law because there's a higher justice, it would be nice to think that perhaps he finds the direction for his application of justice to come from godly law.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. We're going to pause here a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. Our friends at MX Publishing are always coming out with new books, and of course we have talked your ear off all about the MX book of new Sherlock Holmes stories and its final volumes, but what we'd like to talk to you about now are 4 new books in 2025. There's Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Black Pharaoh by J.M. Reinbold. Sherlock Holmes Takes the Case, 8 Tales of Mystery and Intrigue by David McGregor. 221B on Her Majesty's Secret Service by Mark D. Ellis. And The Hidden Enquiries of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Hall. All 4 of these books are exciting adventures in the pastiche style, taking you through various locations and various time settings in the Sherlockian universe. Pick any one of them, pick all 4, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a good time as you read some of these new books that are available from MX Publishing. And just as a reminder, MX offers Audible books as well as paperback and hardbound, and ebooks. So pick your format and get these books in whichever you choose. All available at mxpublishing.com. So, do you know if Kel is still actively writing?
Kel is actively writing. In fact, the place that I found him when I did my most recent internet search was on a website called Ozwords, Ozwrds, because he is Australian, and he has a regular blog in which he shares his perspective on words and terminology that are coming up in the news, and he will share what these words mean, where they came from. He's quite a master of sharing those kind of interesting tidbits about the origins of words, where they came from, how long they've been part of the English language. Anyway, so he does this blog called Ozwords, and I was able to reach out to him using the Contact Kel button on his webpage, and I told him I've been working with Belanger Books, and I've mentioned these 5-minute mystery stories to them, and they're eager to turn them into a book. And so I sent off that message to him, hopeful that I'd get a response. And about 2 or 3 days later, I did get an email from him in which he very apologetically and almost dismissively said, well, there's nothing we can do about that because those stories are lost. That was like several computers ago. And he said, I know I should be more careful with my writing, but they're gone now. Clearly, he hadn't read my Contact Kel message very clearly, but I immediately wrote back to him and said, no, you misunderstand. I have these transcripts from 20 years ago, and we're interested in doing something with them. I shared my Word document with him. I attached it in my email to him and said, you're going to see these are just transcripts that came off of your radio broadcast. So you wrote the stories, and those are lost. But when you read them on the air, somebody did a transcript, and the transcripts were pretty wonky in places. The horrible punctuation, lots of homonyms that were transposed instead of the right words. So that's what happens when people are transcribing quickly. You get the wrong words, and so paragraph breaks were pretty much non-existent. But as I said, a few years back, I had thought maybe I could do something with this, and I had gotten a start into formatting these things and fixing the errors that clearly had been introduced by the transcription. And so I worked on that. I mean, that was going to be my role in this, is getting these scripts, these transcripts, into a publishable shape. And so I did that part of it, and Kel Richards tweaked some of the writing. With 20 years hindsight, he saw some things that he wanted to modify, and so over the course of a few months, we got these 50 stories into a publishable shape, and delivered them to Belanger's, and now this mere dream that I'd had, this notion that wouldn't it be neat if these could be collected into a book? Now they actually are. It's one of my projects that brings me the greatest pleasure, because it's been so long in the gestation from, originally having been written by Kel Richards back in 2002, 2003, and now finally appearing as a book in 2025.
That's marvelous. When I want to say when a plan comes together, but it's more than a plan. I mean, it's a passion that you had. It was driving, and it didn't really have a home for so long, and all of these strands just came together by your association, your continued studiousness in the Sherlockian world, and here we are today, and we all are the better for it, for having this book you put out. So I'm so pleased. If this was a video show, you would have been able to see my smile beaming from ear to ear as you just talked about being able to bring this dream to life. And I think that's just a marvelous example for others.
Well, thank you, and I agree. I think it's a good illustration of the of that maxim, from that was used in the James Fillmore story. When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And I think the chain of events that brought us to the publication of this book seems so improbable. It verges on the impossible, but clearly it happened. And I kind of do suspect that there was a higher power involved in connecting the dots. All these strange, disparate coincidences over the course of 2 decades. I think we were meant to get these stories into print at this time. I don't know why, but I think there's probably at least one reader out there who needs this book. This opportunity to think about the presence of God in their lives, and if it can draw just one person a little closer to God, I'm going to be very pleased and satisfied that we've accomplished something meaningful. And so my answer to the classic maxim, when you've eliminated the impossible, I think eliminate the impossible. With God, all things are possible. And I think this book is a small example of that.
Excellent. Well, folks, if you are interested in reading Sherlock Holmes' 5-Minute Mysteries and exploring what Ray just described, you can do so via the link in our show notes. There's always more information there. Ray, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful story with us here on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere.
Well, it was a pleasure. I've been listening to your show for a bunch of years now, and to actually be able to participate is an honor. Thank you for having me.
You're certainly right about how magnificent a project this is. And it's amazing after all this time and the diligence of being able to find these transcripts. Can you imagine being an author of something and someone calls you up and says, I want to do this, and you say, oh, it's all lost, and someone says, no, I've got it.
Yeah.
But you probably don't know that years ago, of course, I did a whole series of 15-second Sherlock Holmes mysteries. I probably never mentioned that to you.
No.
They're all based on the unpublished cases. They're 15-second mysteries.
15 seconds. Can you lay one on me right now?
An
Have
example?
you got the time? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Here's an example. And they're all based on Sherlockian dialogue. He's always the one speaking. Here's an example. Your glasses are on your forehead, Mr. Meridew. You have an abominable memory.
I think we have a candidate for the new canonical couplets. Yeah, the 15-second, I don't even know what we would
mysteries,
call it. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, keep at it. Maybe someone will have a transcript for you in 20 years.
I hope so.
I encourage you. No, I agree. I mean, what we heard from Ray just now, often what starts as a personal interest turns into something that becomes more widely shared or more widely appreciated. And I think that's part of the wonder of this, that, you or I or someone like Ray or, anybody listening may have this catalog that they're keeping in the back of their mind. I mean, look at Madeline and her passion for tracking Sherlockian podcasts. Well, that turned into a whole segment for us. Right. Mm. And that wasn't her intention when she started. It was just something that was interesting to her. You saw the presentation in Dayton, and we connected the dots. And that's why you never know where a passion project may take you, or who you're going to surprise while doing it, or what the ultimate outcome may be. And I think for folks that are interested in short mysteries like this, which is always fascinating, it's lovely to have just a little quick read, and who might want to pick something up along the way that's more than just something fun and entertaining, but they might want to pick up a moral lesson, as Ray mentioned, something to take away from this that can be shared, particularly with children or others that we care about. And I just think this is a great object for that kind of output. Well, it's time once again to welcome our pal Madeline Quinones back. Madeline, take it away. It's A Chance of Listening with your correspondent, Madeline Quinones.
Hello, everyone. I'm Madeline Quinones, and today I'm here to talk about a niche little podcast, I Heart Sherlock. Mike Pincinetti created the show in 2022 and then got his friend Tom Folletto to join him. In I Heart Sherlock, they primarily discuss pastiche, as well as the canon and some adaptations. I will admit, I haven't listened to more than a couple of episodes, but I didn't want spoilers for the pastiches that we're talking about. I could have listened to the episodes where they talk about canon stories, yes, but look, I know I made a joke last time about story discussion podcasts, but the truth is that I've listened to several such podcasts, and my brain is now a little bit broken. I can tell you that they cover quite a few of the early stories, but I can't give you any more information than that. This is nothing against the hosts. I'm just not sure I can hear more opinions even about the final problem at this point. I literally just felt my blood pressure go up. I can tell you that there is one pastiche they really disliked, and the way they go on about it is pretty funny. They do, if I recall correctly, kind of half apologize to the author. I Heart Sherlock was on hiatus for pretty much all of 2024 and into this year, but in June, Mike and Tom released a comeback episode. As of this recording, that is their last episode, but I do genuinely hope they come back. That, by the way, is the episode I'd recommend checking out first. Episode 24, their most recent episode. I found that to be a better introduction to Mike and Tom than their first episode. And like I said, I hope they get back to doing this regularly again. More Sherlockiana is more. And I think this is the perfect podcast for obsessive pastiche readers. And that's all I've got for now. I've got one more podcast to dive into, and then 2 more shows I'm well acquainted with after that. And then I think that's it. But then, the last time I thought that I'd caught them all, I proved myself wrong. So we'll see what happens. Catch you later.
Well, I Heart Sherlock. That's nice. It's one letter more and 2 letters less than I hear of Sherlock. But we heart Madeline. That's the bottom line here.
Yeah, we sure do.
Oh, those jaunty strings can mean only one thing, and of course that means it's time to put your brains to work. It's time for the Canonical Couplet, the Sherlockian quiz program, where we give you 2 lines of poetry and ask you to apply your little gray cells to determine which Sherlock Holmes story we are talking about. Now, if you remember, the last time we were around here, we gave you this clue. Gregson and Lestrade made contributions minimal. Within 3 days, Holmes's hand was on the criminal. Oh, boy. Bert, put your little gray cells to work. Let's see what you have.
Well, it's obvious. It's a terrific story. It's a story where this American counterfeiter tries to get an eccentric collector out of his house by telling him that an odd bedspread designer supposedly is leaving money to his relatives. It's the story Watson called The 3 Garish Beds.
My forehead is starting to get a flat mark from where I'm banging it against the desk. I don't know if anyone could hear that, but no,
What?
and no again, Bert. I'm sorry. I know it's shocking. But our pal Eric Decker's to the rescue. He writes, "Excelente! I've solved it. This is the story where Holmes had a torrid love affair with a married woman, in which he kept copious notes and read as many books on adultery as he could. It's the story Watson called A Study in the Scarlet Letter. Except I think I may be mixing this up with a Nathaniel Hawthorne book. It's more likely to be A Study in Scarlet." Why, yes, Eric, you have got it. Well, why don't we turn to the big spinning prize wheel and bring it on in here and give it a spin. Watching it go around, slowing down and landing on number 28. 28, and that looks like it is Patrick Bazzini. Hey, congratulations, Patrick. We have a copy of Nicholas Meyer's book for you. So congratulations on that. I should also note, Bert, that Patrick wrote in with his answer. He said, "I also want to let you know how much I enjoyed this particular episode. As a forensic science professor, I loved the topic and the discussions about forgeries, having done a bit of research in the area. I really appreciated Bert's comment on Giovanni Morelli and connecting him with Freud and consequently with Holmes, which reminded me of the excellent work of Italian historian Carlo Ginzburg, whom I have had the pleasure of including in a few of my writings and lectures. Loved it. Keep shining, Patrick."
Oh, how interesting. Boy, I've
lovely?
read it is lovely. Well, thank you, Patrick. The Ginsburg was an Italian historian, and I've read some of his work, which is really. I seem to remember, one about mythology and ancient superstition, something that was really fascinating. How interesting.
Yeah. Well done. Well, we do have another prize available for this canonical couplet. It is, as we mentioned at the top of the show, a copy of Ray Riethmeier and Kel Richards' book, Sherlock Holmes 5-Minute Mysteries. So get your pencils ready and get your thinking caps on. Here we go. Followed back to Baker Street, Holmes endured a rare defeat. If you know the answer to this episode's canonical couplet, put it in an email addressed to comment@ihearofsherlock.com with canonical couplet in the subject line. If your name is selected at random from all the correct answers, you'll win. Good luck. Oh, boy, Bert, I think this episode went on longer than 5 minutes.
You think so, huh?
Like a little bit. Little bit. No worries, though. We'll be back for, threatening people with another long 5 minutes in about 15 days. Should be good.
I'll
That
put
is
it on my
if you've
calendar.
reset your calendar by then.
Yeah, I'll put it on my calendar.
We have to get one of those talking calendars for you.
Oh, well, nah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about that. I wouldn't. The problem with the talking calendar is you can't really have much of a conversation.
Well, I disagree.
If the answer isn't going to be Tuesday or Wednesday, it's really.
You got at least 5 other days to choose from. But I would disagree with that assumption overall because I have a talking calendar at home. The talking calendar constantly says, Scott, come on, get ready. Don't you know we have to leave for something in 5 minutes? It's my wife. Yeah, always keeping me on task. Don't know where we'd be without people like that in our lives.
No place.
We'd be falling behind, as we are with this episode. Well, folks, just a reminder again, if you like the show, if you have heard something here that has touched you in one way or another, please let us know. Leave us a comment at ihearofsherlock.com in email. You can also drop by any of our socials or leave a comment in the show notes on ihearofsherlock.com. And, of course, if you would like to listen to the show ad-free, it's just our reminder to go to Patreon or to Substack and check out which one works for you. We would welcome you to the community there and remind you that not only do you get to listen to the show ad-free, but you get bonus content. So stay tuned for that, and thank you in advance. Well, I guess, Bert, in the meantime, this is the ad-free Scott Monty.
And I'm the guy with the easy-to-fill-out coupon. I'm Bert Wilder.
I like the sandwich boards you wear around the office here.
Oh, it's a big improvement over the sliced ham I used to wear.
A ham, how appropriate. And until next time around these parts, we say, the game's afoot.
The game's afoot.
I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I am neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.